Is it possible to harness the passion and success from your art practice and apply it to other aspects of your life? Welcome to this episode of I Love Your Stories. I'm your host, Hava Gurevich, and today I am truly honored to have as my guest Nick Suino. Suino Sensei is one of the leading martial arts instructors in North America, and he translated that mastery into the principles of success itself that apply in diverse fields. He runs a successful martial arts school as well as a marketing firm. He's an author of several award winning books and a motivational speaker, a life coach, and an entrepreneur. Join us as we talk about the importance of having good role models, the power of transformation, and the challenges of having a business around your art practice. Welcome to the show, Nick. Now, a quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right back to the show. When I started selling my art, I had absolutely no idea how to actually turn it into a business, a professional business. And then I came across art storefronts, and that was a game changer. I've been a customer now for years, and they've been instrumental in every way, every step of the way of helping me succeed. I have a gorgeous, powerful commerce website. I have marketing tools and a membership to a community that is very supportive and teaches me how to succeed as an artist. Check them out, artstorefronts.com, and tell them Hala sent you. So, do you go by Nick or Nicholas?
Just Nick, please.
Nick. Okay, great. So where I want to direct the conversation sort of is the intersection of art and life and how one influences the other, and it's kind of a feedback loop. And, when I say art, I mean any kind of practice that you do passionately throughout your life, your calling, that's your art. And I
Love
think
it.
you know that. What's interesting to me, and that's the conversations we've had in the past, that is, even though on the surface it seems like we are in completely different fields,
Mhm.
and especially since I don't really know much about martial arts, and well, you know more about visual arts and than I know about martial arts, but when we start talking about the creative process or just what it takes to be focused on what you're doing and where that leads, like how your practice influences your art. And so I'm holding I'm holding this book that just came
Okay.
out, the mini biography of who you are. It's really quite impressive, and I'm glad that I got to know you and talk to you like a normal person before I read all this because it's a little bit intimidating.
Well, listen, it's nice to have fans, and so this guy Bob Wolf is a martial artist who I've helped out a little bit, and so he wrote the book, and I think it's more it creates accolades for me that I don't know if I deserve, but nice to have it out there.
I think it's good to hear how your life work is perceived by somebody who appreciates it. And it's to me always kind of humbling, but also a good reminder that there is a persona and there is like a life's work that I put out into the world and that you put out into the world, and it has a life of its own in a way.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is an entity that others interact with. And as much as like we can try to control our, you know, the output,
Hmm.
not really control how it's perceived and how it affects others. And so when you get this like really clear confirmation that what you've been doing, what you've been putting out there is resonating so deeply, it's
Yeah, yeah. It's very gratifying, but that's a really interesting point. I'm assuming the same for you. I do the things I love. I do martial arts. I run a marketing business that I never thought I'd be in marketing, but I've grown to love. And I just do those things and go about my business. and most of the time not thinking about how it might be perceived in the world. And I don't even know if I would be able to do a good job of knowing, right? Like how what I put out, how does it land? At the same time, not without the years since I've been in business, you're never completely without the idea of how can I influence the public a perception of what I do, right? I want the public to think well of me. I want the things I do, martial arts, marketing, personal development, conversations. I want that to seem valuable. I want it to actually be valuable, but I want it to seem valuable too. But at the end of the day, you know, I think if, boy, this is a tough one. For me, I can only spend so much time curating my public persona.
Yes.
And then I sort of have to be happy with what's out there. So this is a great confirmation. Probably not the short biography I would have written for myself. And
Well,
I'm not sure I would have. I don't feel old enough to write a biography yet, an autobiography yet. But you see what I mean? So there's a distinction between kind of how we live, what we try to put out there, and finally, ultimately, the
there is
perception that other people
there is
have.
a distinction, but it's also like a constant conversation between them.
Hmm.
One, even if you try not to let how your life's work is perceived get to your head or influence you, it is all interconnected in a way. But, speaking of how you would, have your autobiography, I believe this what on the back of the book is from your website, and I'm just gonna read it, but before I do, this word Dojo, is it just pronounced dojo or
Just pronounced dojo. Yep.
okay, dojo, and what does that mean?
So literally means the way place, the place you pursue your path,
Oh,
right? So we think of it as a martial arts school, but really a dojo could be anything where you're pursuing your studio is a dojo, right?
oh, yeah, actually, that is exactly that is basically the concept.
Cool.
Alright, so, for more than 3 decades, thousands of people have become more centered, happier, and more successful with Nicholas Suino's, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly,
Perfect. Perfect.
guidance.
Mhm.
He has been called one of the leading martial arts instructors in North America, but his influence radiates far beyond the dojo. He has made his life's mission to learn the fundamental principles of success in many different fields, apply those principles, and then share them with others. Author of 12 books, uh, Suino helped transform professionals, business owners, athletes, martial artists, and ordinary people with his presentations, group training, and coaching. Suino owns and co owns successful businesses in diverse fields like martial arts, marketing, publishing, and law. And he has been honored by the University of Michigan Dearborn as Mentor of the Year, by the Blue Water Chamber of Commerce Business Expo for advancing entrepreneurship, and by the International Martial Arts Federation for supporting traditional Japanese Bu- Budo. The thing, though, that I really want to sort of focus on, I hope, is this part says that through your dojo as a martial
Mhm.
arts expert, that you have translated that passion, that journey, and that success into like the principles of success in life. And that's the thing I really want to talk to you about. But can you just a little bit about your journey?
Uh, yeah, well, I've had a long journey so far, and it's taken a lot of different forms. I don't know what to call it. Um, I have a short attention span for some things and a very long attention span for the other. I can't explain it. I started martial arts in 1968, and I really, other than a few years in high school when I was doing gymnastics, I never quit. And interestingly, I went to I moved to Tokyo when I was 28 years old and spent about 4 years there training in martial arts and, working part-time. And it wasn't until I came back and then another few years had elapsed that I realized that that was sort of a pivotal moment where I changed from somebody who was a little bit lost and, always a follower to somebody who then was well self-directed, and I realized I was more comfortable as a leader. Now, I don't say that with arrogance because I know I make a lot of bad decisions and I'm very inefficient sometimes, but I just realized that I'm more comfortable leading the ship than taking somebody else's direction, and vastly more comfortable. And once I made that distinction in my life, um, I was able to just really dig in and do things right. Went to law school, clerked at the Michigan Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court, had some really good law jobs. It was never my calling, but I just realized I was able to focus and do that. Started a dojo in Lansing, Michigan, ran it for 10 years and sold it, and then eventually moved back to Ann Arbor and started a dojo here. I've been running that dojo for about 19 years now. So that was a pivotal switch. And I'm going to bring this back to martial arts because I had really phenomenal martial arts teachers in Japan, world-class, historic level martial arts teachers. But my Iaido sword teacher was the primary influence for me. His name was Mr. Yamaguchi. We called him Yamaguchi Sensei, and he was, I say this, and it's absolutely true for me. He was the first role model for how to be a man that I had. And I don't mean like in some like macho movie sense. He was a very strong and consistent man, but he was also gentle. He was calm. He just showed me how to be kind of a grown up. Meanwhile, being one of the best swordsmen who's lived in the 20th century. And so I was just enamored with the guy, right? Absolutely overwhelmed. And so while I was with him, I was the best follower that I've ever been for anybody ever. Literally, I joke about this, but if he had said, go run in the street, to get better at Iaido, I would have done it. I just emptied my cup completely and I gave myself over to that experience. And to this day, his influence still radiates with me. So that was like this transformative, pivotal moment, right? Go in as a young man, want to be strong. I want to be perceived as strong. I want to do this physical thing that I love. I got really good at it, won all kinds of accolades. But the primary takeaway from that experience was this relationship I had with an extraordinary teacher. And that turned the corner for me.
Yeah, I think you said that it wasn't until later that you realized that was a pivotal moment.
I knew that I was enamored with him, right? Overwhelmed and thrilled to be training with this guy. And, every lesson was like and he and his wife were extraordinarily kind and generous to me. And when I look back, I'm kind of ashamed. I don't think I was as I would be nicer and more appreciative now than I was then, although I wasn't bad. I did work very, very hard. I knew I loved him. I knew the experience was unique. I knew he opened all kinds of doors for me over in Japan. I did not know I was undergoing a personal change, right? Went in as a lost follower, came out as a pretty well directed leader. And the lessons continue.
I'm curious which of these skills or what part of the transformation has poised you to like come back and like go to law school and start all these businesses? Like how did that translation happen? Like what did you bring?
Yeah. I think early on, I loved martial arts because it was physically active. I was, for some reason, I can't explain why, but I was more comfortable in the spotlight, in a tournament or whatever when I was very young. And so to me, it was just a playground when I was young. But what I didn't realize at the time was I was learning the relationship between hard physical work and success,
Mm,
right?
okay.
And so in those days, it was go to class, do the things your teacher tells you, practice, 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 go to a tournament or in-house, compete with your friends and do well. As I got older and I started getting into other martial arts like karate, my teacher, Carl Scott Sensei, who's passed away, but when I trained with him, his thing was practice, 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 but also do more push-ups, like thousands. We literally did thousands of push-ups in a week. And so the analogy is, if you learn to love push-ups, your punches are going to be stronger. That's so simple and direct, right? But it's the analogy for all the work. If you learn to love the work and connect it in some way with better outcomes, then it's not just put up with the work. You
Yeah.
sort of have to be one of those raving fanatics, right? Where you have to, at first at first it's what do you want to call it? You're just like cheerleader for yourself. You love this, go, go, go. But after a while, this funny thing happens, right? The people I know in the top 1% of martial arts are able to tell themselves to do something and love it without the cheerleading and do things that other people just can't do. And the years and years of training allow me to do these physical things that most people wouldn't be able to do. And it's just because of that stacking. But somewhere along the line, you grow up, you realize you have to do something for a living, and you realize it's the same relationship between push-ups and good punches as there is between, studying the law books and passing your exams, or, you know,
Okay.
picking up the phone when you don't want to and calling a difficult client and having the conversation will lead to a better outcome in the
So
at least the marketing file.
you took the skills and the practice and applied it to another field.
I think so. It wasn't that intellectual at the time, but I just started doing harder and harder things
Mhm,
and realizing that, so here's a part that I bet you can relate to as a visual artist. A big part of both is breaking them down into simple components,
mhm.
right? So when you do a complex martial art, when you're fighting somebody in a karate art or a striking art, the distancing and the timing and the movement and the fear and the stamina, that's a really complex set of equations, right? Lots of chaos. But the truth is what it is, you move your foot, you move your hand, it's really it's really that simple. And when I got to when I got to law school, that was much easier than the practice of law, by the way, because you had
Yeah.
there were some challenges, but the teacher would say, "Here's the books we're reading, learn the case." And I had, if I can go into a dojo and train for 3 hours, I can go to a library with coffee, or go to the coffee shop
Yeah.
and eat cinnamon rolls and read law books. That was the easiest thing I ever did, right? But it was that same thing. You put in the hard work and then go take the test.
How did you know that you've sort of, like, figured something profound about the way reality works on this level and wanted to share that?
That's a great question. Um, uh, when I That's a great question because as you asked me that, I think there's two really different parts to that answer. One was, um, there's a way you study for exams in law school, a way I studied, which I would write an outline of the course. And then for each outline, I would write subheadings and then subheadings and subheadings. And I would essentially memorize that. So you're memorizing like a whole law book, right? Spent about, I don't know, the first semester was horrible. Second semester was horrible. After that, they got easier. And by the last couple semesters of law school, I basically screwed off until the last 3 weeks. And then I, built these schema. But again, breaking it down into smallest pieces, memorizing the piece and how it connects to the other pieces, and then going to take the exams. And I don't know if I knew it at the time, but looking back on it, same thing. Your teacher teaches you a kata, which is a complex set of motions, and you do a piece and you see how it connects to the other piece, and you just keep doing it, break it down to its smallest parts. And even after you've done it for 20 years, you still do that. You sort of integrate it all and then you break it back down into small pieces. So that's been kind of a theme. I've told you before, my mother was in visual arts and she taught me to do watercolors or oil paintings when I was a kid. And I never pursued it or got good at it. It was the same thing. She would talk to me about color and form you know, and so you see this complex, beautiful work of art. Oh my God, how did that get done? And she could
One
explain it.
brushstroke at a time.
Yeah, yeah, right. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that would start to just be a theme, and when you live long enough, it sticks. But here's the other piece: is that I don't remember the timing of this exactly, but I started getting interested in personal development stuff. Sort of the big players, the Tony Robbins, the Deepak Chopras, the Brendan Burchards of the world. Um, and a friend of mine got some free tickets to Tony Robbins, who's the big, personal development guy in Chicago. And we did a 4-day Tony Robbins event. And I remember how immersive it was, but um, I remember how immersive Tony Robbins was, but then I left there not feeling very good because of the sort of the hyper marketing, salesy aspect of it, right?
That's what I
And yeah, and so I felt like there was a lot of really good information contained in it, but I just felt like the push towards sales was too much. Now I'll let other people make that moral judgment. I think there's some real value to it, but I spent a few years studying all that stuff, and when I went through a real tough period in my life later, um, uh, I just consumed all of it and tried to pull out Like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's famous, right? Famous martial artist. And he always said, absorb what is useful. So I go to one of these events or I read one of these guys' books and I go, half of this stuff is pretty good. And if it wasn't dressed up in the salesy clothing, it would actually be useful. So I tried to pull that out and I discovered a lot of the same stuff. Go out and learn about the world, figure out how it works, break
Yeah.
it down into its component parts. And when you do that, you can share it with other people and they have breakthroughs too.
Yeah. But it sounds like such a clear formula, but something that we usually forget to do because especially when it's something new and you see the entire thing and it feels like you have to know it all up front and do it all at once. And
Mhm.
so to remember that everything in life is just one step at a time. And if you break it up one step at a time, it's not so overwhelming. Um, there was another thing that you mentioned that I really appreciate is, because there are people who, they might be interested in an idea, but then there might be some aspect of it, like the salesy part of it, and being able to sort of say, like, "There's something good here." You can still extract something good from almost everything.
Yeah, there's a piece to this that's really intriguing that comes to mind when you talk about that, and that is how you interact with those people or how you interact with a system that's too salesy, how you get to a place of quote unquote success has so much to do with how you value yourself.
Hmm.
And so that's where I think some of that personal development stuff, it's really tricky. Um, you need a level of confidence to say, I can take on this system and I can take the parts I want and I'll be fine. I'm guessing that, you and I have talked about this a little bit as you've been a visual artist a long time, but a business person, not as long,
Yes. Not as long.
right? And stepping over that threshold, I think, has something to do with it. You have to have a belief that you can maintain whatever beauty or goodness there is about what you do, and not worry about it or worry about it in measure, in the right measure, so that because if you think it's gonna corrupt you and you let that stop you, then you never go over that threshold, right?
You hit a raw nerve there. It's still but I appreciate that you said that there is faith there. Like, I I want to do this. It's like I want to make art that's visually, like, coming from me. It's an expression of my own inner world, visually. Um, but I also want to make art that's sellable, and I want to have a viable business. And how do you, maintain both the integrity of both? Because they're both you. Uh,
That's true.
yeah, and, I'm still, that's a struggle for me still, personally, and I guess, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because that actually has been we've had conversations before about entrepreneurship and the ups and downs of it, and, especially this idea that in retrospect, sometimes the things that seemed like the worst disasters really ended up being blessings. Um, and, it's one of the things. I think this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, as an artist, because, there is so much, even though on the surface martial arts and visual arts are very different fields, um, beneath the surface for somebody who is practicing or living that life, there's it's more similar than not. And the reason I recently came to that conclusion because I've been drawing a lot of parallels between my art practice and my practice as living as a human.
Mm.
And there is so much that I bring let my experience to my art, but then art teaches me something that I can apply back to my experience in that loop. And that relationship isn't unique to artists. And I know that you have a similar relationship. That's sort of like what I picked up on with, you just dropped everything and went to Japan to study martial arts because that was your passion. and you studied hard. You did the work, and you excelled at it, and then you came back and you continued to do it, but you also it clearly informed your life. It informed how you live your life, how you create your reality, you know, of day to day, and what you want for yourself. And you pursued that to the point where you're like, I cracked the formula.
Well, some formula, right?
Formula.
I can't say it works for everybody. Do you have any specific examples to kind of get into this conversation a little more about that how art informs life
Yeah.
and life informs.
Yes. So I had this epiphany actually this morning while I was doing my morning writing. And so it's still a bit raw, but I'll try to kind of. So for me, the process of creating the art is that's what's really enjoyable. That process is where all the growth happens, where all the mistakes happen, where all the insights happen. And, the finished piece, sometimes it's something that, I can say this is one of my iconic or, one of my great pieces. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a stepping stone to the next thing, Um, but that process is like, if I had the ability to just sort of like close my eyes, imagine a finished piece, snap my fingers and it appears, I would stop being an artist.
Uh-huh.
I would stop being an artist because it's there's no the magic of discovery, the magic of sort of the learning and that excitement was gone. Um, and so then I was looking at life, and I'm very much in this place of, like, personal journey, and then sort of like, why am I here? What is my greater purpose? What am I here to do? And, I feel very fortunate that I think I am on the path that I was meant to be on. And it's just that that because that's the thing that you're most passionate about. That's the thing that excites you the most. That's your calling. And so there is, in a sense, like, if I kinda step back, um, that perfect, complete person who has created all these works of art and, like, manifested all the creativity and all the flow and all the, abundance and all the success that exists. But what's really interesting is the process of getting there, and that's life. And I just finally made that connection that my purpose here as a human being having this life is to experience that journey of discovery. The best part is the discovery. The best part is, and to further that analogy, looking back, the things that I thought were failures typically ended up being the best things. And the times when I didn't sit down with the intent to create something great, I just sat down to just without any expectation. That's when, you don't block things because you're not saying, no, I'm not going to do this because that's not part of my artistic style. You just do it because you feel like doing it, and that's how you grow. So that's kind of like the connection that I made, like a very direct connection between process in art and process in life. Um,
Yeah, and that's so wonderful because you speak of visual art and I feel martial arts when you say that.
yeah.
There's a I have said, and I'm sure many people said it before me, I don't think you're a martial artist if you don't do martial arts.
Mhm.
And the reason that's appropriate or important is because people that get into the business of martial arts or hold themselves out as teachers, right? There's this whole huge stereotype of many of them become, they become soft and fat and they're leaders and maybe they're running a school, but they're not martial artists anymore because they're not training. Um, so it's just like, if you stop painting, are you still a painter? I don't know, right? But I believe that if I stop training in martial arts, and that doesn't mean I have to fight or compete or necessarily teach, although I teach because I love it and I teach because it's how the rent gets paid at the dojo. Um, but I have to do martial arts to be a martial artist. It's my calling, like visual arts is your calling. But there's two interesting parts to this. So we have one side of martial arts that's kata, it's drilling or repetitive training. And I would guess in your world, that's like, I don't know what to call it. You draw colors and you do your work. You got to
Yeah.
good at your tools, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you get good at your tools by doing the ultimate expression of them. But sometimes you got to go back to basics. Or I imagine an opera singer always has to sing scales, right?
Yeah.
So we have fundamentals that we always work on in martial arts, but that the joy of discovery, um, the first place you encounter it, or I encountered it, was in free training, in sparring or right, because all of a sudden now the palette's wide open. You have these set of tools. Let's say in karate, you have punches and kicks and blocks and stepping, right, and distance and angles and timing, and you put those tools into play, and you don't know how it's going to come out, right? And it's immersive.
Yeah.
So often while you're doing it, you lose yourself, but afterwards you say, "Wow, right, that's me at my ultimate in this physical game," and it's powerfully rewarding. And it's like at the end, you could look back on, unfortunately, unless you have a video of it, you can't look back on it like a painting and then it's preserved forever. You just have to reflect on it with the people that saw it or the person you were fighting with and go, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
that was really cool." Yeah.
A lot of times, the moments, the best parts of the painting are memories that I have about some breakthrough,
Mm.
and a lot of times they are preserved in the painting, and
Yeah.
they're preserved to such a degree, that, I don't have a witness, like, you can talk to the person you're sparring with or people who are watching and, like, remember that I can just have a conversation directly with the painting and be like, I remember exactly what was going through my mind when I
Mhm.
decided to put this color down and what happened." So there is a witness. There is a witness even there.
Yeah, yeah, and then you've got this memorial at the end. It made me think of, we've talked about chefs before, right? It makes me think of that idea. You create this beautiful meal. It looks, make you take a picture of it, but that doesn't capture the flavors. And then people eat it and they have the flavors, the appearance, the environment, and then
Yeah.
poof, it's gone.
Yeah, that's very true. I'd love to pick your brain about so you started doing, marketing and, like, the SEO stuff because because you had to, right?
Well, I came back to Ann Arbor and opened the martial arts dojo and had to market it to fill to get students. Yeah.
But you learned to love it.
I love the challenge.
Right.
The
Oh, you
big pic yeah. The big picture challenge. So gosh, I think it's like art again. I think what I love about it is at the beginning of a new project or a new client or at the beginning of a new marketing campaign, you sit down either alone or with other people and you say, "Man, here's where I am, here's where I want to be, here's what the perfect outcome looks like, right? This is what my marketing looks like. This is the kind of people that are coming in. These, of course, are the dollar figures that are associated with that." And it's so optimistic.
Mhm.
And it's like bringing something out of the ether into reality.
Yeah.
And the best clients are the ones that can kind of go along for that ride and they're partners with you because it's never snap your fingers and it
Sure.
works perfectly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hurdles on the way. So what's appealing to me is getting on board with people that I really like. At first, it was just me, right,
Yeah.
doing the dojo and saying, "Here's the vision. Here's where we can go," and then going backtrack and going, "How do we get there?" And now, after almost 20 years of doing it, I have a set of skills and a bunch of palettes that I'm accustomed to using, and so now it's not just a one-off. I can say, "Here's the vision. Wow. How do we get there?" Well, I've got all these tools and I've got a team that knows how to employ them, and that's super fun. There's a lot of challenges in it. It's not nearly as fun as having money to spend and spending it, but it's more rewarding because when you hit it, the success is not only for me, but it's for my team and it's for the client. and often their families and the employees of that business, right?
That's
There's a
that's
big outcome there.
yeah, that's amazing, and that's such an optimistic way of looking at it, especially because you mentioned that salesy component in the Tony Robbins, right?
Hmm.
In his seminars that was a put off. So, you know, it's interesting for me as an artist who is a business owner, and I think it resonates with most artists who are business owners because we just have this knee-jerk reaction to business as being salesy. I don't wanna be salesy. Uh,
Hmm.
and, so, what I know that there's a way to do that that's much more sort of like you're still doing that. It's a business and you take on the challenge. But it sounds like your focus stays on like the bigger picture of how it's going to benefit those people that actually this was for them. So
Yes, and there's methods. Um, there's always, in my opinion, a better, more noble way of doing things.
Mhm.
And we don't run a sales company. I think we run an education company, really. Um, I think the best marketing is building trust, educating your market, right?
Yeah,
Telling the truth, but telling the truth in compelling ways on a lot of places,
yeah.
right? So people get the message. I really try to avoid for myself or working with others saying, "Hey, we're ABC company, buy our stuff."
Stuff, yeah.
Right?
I appreciate that, and thinking about marketing, the business side of it, as more of providing a service and education,
Mhm.
rather than, like, trying to be pushy about sales, like, especially, in my case with art, because art is not a necessity. Well,
Depends on who you ask.
exactly. I
Right.
think it is, but, um, for most people, it's discretionary, like, it's something you get when as a luxury. It's really filed for most people under luxury, and so convincing someone to buy is not it feels icky. It
Mhm,
feels
mhm,
slimy.
mhm.
It always feels like because I don't like to be the target of a hard sell,
Right,
and I'm not confrontational, and I will sometimes, like, cave in just because I don't know how to say no, but
right.
then I have so much, resentment towards
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire process,
Mhm.
and so, I think it is an art. I think it is an art, of being able to, um, present it in a way that's, like, truthful and thoughtful and educational, but also effective. Um,
With your visual art and with my martial arts, we're very lucky because we have things that almost sell themselves. And our job is only to make sure everybody knows how cool they are and some of the backstory, right? But when people see your art, I'm sure there are people who don't like it, but
Right.
when I see it and when I everybody I know that I've shared it with sees it, they're like, "Wow, that's really cool. Oh, you mean like a person actually painted this?" And then, I say, "Oh, I know Hava," and they're like, "Ah, that's amazing." And if I put a cool video of some martial arts up on the internet,
Yeah.
there's critics, of course, but most people are moved by it. It's visceral, right?
Yep.
And I don't have to say, "Come buy this stuff." I just have to say, "This is cool. Check it out. You want to know where it's happening?" Right? That's all.
Yeah.
So that's lucky. So I'm glad that I don't have to sell for myself, a product that you have to somehow overcome, or that I don't know if I would sell accounting software very well.
But
You know?
yeah, but it's really, helpful, I think. I thought, like, having a conversation about the creative process or having a conversation about, um, the journey of creativity, the journey of your calling. It's for me, it's really refreshing to hear that insight into the business aspect where, you so I made a connection between my art and my life, but the business part of it is still out there in the cold. I it's not incorporated yet, and it's very interesting to hear it described as a creative process and as a challenge and as something that you can do well with integrity.
Yeah, there was a piece of it that I want to make sure we mention. You describe your art as a calling, right? It's what you're kind of meant to do. And I know that's true for me in the martial arts. If I had to give up everything else, I can still do martial arts, right? It's my calling. And there's that, I don't know how to describe that spark you get, right? The divine spark or whatever that gives you that. Um, and I think the maximum uh, expression of that is in that place, in that calling, right? But I think we do our best work in everything when we try to stay in touch with that,
Yes.
right? So even if we're doing business or whatever, there's that
Yeah.
spark or energy. I don't know what to call it, but if you do business, if I do business just as a as a set of squares and numbers, it's not very interesting. It has to have that same. I have
Ye
to try to resource that same feeling of connection. I think one of the reasons that law never inspired me was because I wasn't able really to make that connection.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that wasn't true for others. Maybe other people can kind of access that defined spark or that calling and thrive in that area, but I never really could. Marketing was easier for me to get to because of that optimism and the ability to kind of bring other people up and make lives better. Um,
Yeah.
so
Just touch upon this. This is our first conversation, this idea of that there is a point where you are a martial arts master and I'm a professional artist, and therefore everything that I do is art. Everything that you do is part of martial arts. And when you create something new, you are adding to the field of martial arts. Like you are in a position to like add your own voice. You're not just repeating what someone else already did. You are in that position. Am I saying this correctly? Um
yeah. Yes. There's a concept I may have mentioned to you that before they had black belts and colored belts for martial arts, there was this idea of a transmission that the teacher after a number of years would give the student a scroll and it would say, okay, now you're at this level. And there weren't that many, 3 levels or 5 levels, but there was a certain level. It's called Menkyo Kaiden in the traditional Japanese arts, where the teacher basically says, look, you've done this long enough. When you do this art, whatever you do from here on out, that's this art. It's no longer you pursuing something separate from yourself. You can forge the new path, right? Um, and 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 I love that you said you can kind of walk that into life. It's no doubt true that if you've been a painter for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, you're going to act differently in the world, right? You've got disciplined thoughts and habits. You've got a sensitivity to color and shape. There might be a lot of other things that I don't understand about that influence how you walk through the world. And I know that, I'm a martial artist through and through. And so many decisions I make are connected to that. But here's what I love. And I got goosebumps when I thought of it as you were talking about that. When I'm not happy with how my life is going, when I'm facing a challenge and I let myself down, it's because I'm not living into that set of disciplines that I've learned over the years. Um, and I've never really thought about it in that way before. That it's probably a nice can opener into feeling a little more settled about how I act in the world, right? Because I kind of know I have the standards for myself in the dojo and as this sort of martial arts master part of my life. In the rest of life, now that I think about it, a lot of times when I let myself down, it's because I didn't live into those principles. And I'm going to take this conversation and move forward from that and see if it helps kind of bring the two together a little more.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Um, it would be, I'm hoping that over time I get to talk to other people who are in that level of mastery in whatever they chose as their calling, and find those places where we, you know, like might have different vocabulary and different interpretation or different description of what we're doing, but really we're doing the same thing. Um, I want to end with last question, and that is, what are you most passionate about right now?
I am most passionate about a very complex theory I have about the relationship of time, um, the evolution of humanity, the development of AI, um, and how we can maintain our humanness. And for those of us who are artists of some form, our artist nature in the face of this automation that's coming.
I think I'm gonna have to start with that with that question.
Yeah, that's a big conversation.
But so I know that AI is affecting, writing, like publishing. It's affecting um, law, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And it's certainly affecting marketing and SEO and all of that. Um, is there some overlap with martial arts because it's such a physical thing?
Not yet, but there's just like, you know, now when you turn on your computer, right? You can do data analysis, you can do art, you can read the news, you can watch videos. Um, the fact that this thing called AI can generate good ideas, can write writing, it can create visual art now, videos. I think it's only a matter of time before the a computer can have a video feed on a martial arts engagement
Mhm.
and break it down into details and explain why something went well and something when it didn't. And then maybe, just maybe, it's a longer process, but we're not that far away from having an integrated computer
Yeah.
in the human being that maybe will direct that interaction, create these super martial artists. I don't know. That's a long way away,
Right.
but
Would you say that you're looking ahead at it? Is it optimism? Is it like trepidation? Like, do you see it as something generally positive or
I do. I that might be because I'm generally a positive person. I think it's going to be an existential process. We're going to go through an evolution as in the next 100 years or less as humanity, where we're going to be faced with a completely different life, and we don't have the nervous system skills or the emotional coping skills to really deal with it yet.
yeah.
Um, you know, here's where I take refuge in two things. One is the artist is not an artist unless the artist is doing art.
Yes.
Right? And so you can produce art, but that's not the same as being a human being doing art, and that will save us. But the other one is that we need I don't know if we're going to have will on the part of a computer, right? I don't know if a computer is going to have the will to do something without a human directing it. And that that's unclear. That's unclear, but I'm optimistic that we can take this, which will be the most powerful tool that humans have ever created, and do some absolutely amazing things with it, even though there'll be bad actors doing
Yes. Oh, yeah.
bad things with it at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, my attitude is, optimistic as well. Um, and it's interesting, like, you know, AI art kinda just took over, and it's become so, almost indistinguishable from, like, video, especially video, like, um and of course, bad actors are using
Mm.
it for all kinds of, things, and, um, but I've also noticed that even just in this, like, year or 2 years that it's been around and it's evolved so quickly, the sentiment about it went from, like, real excitement to lawsuits and
Right.
copyright infringements, and, like, there's a big souring
Mhm.
within the artist community, at least that I'm part of, on, AI art. And it feels like a natural evolution of something because I think about early days of computer art, computer graphics, and they evolved very quickly, and the very first iterations of them were just being able to easily do what a photographer would take, a long time to do, or um,
Mhm.
but it has evolved into something of its own that is an independent art form, but it has to have these, like, growing pains in a sense. It starts out by imitating what is already existing, because it's doing is feeding on the information that's available,
Yeah,
right?
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, so it starts out that way. So it's like,
Mhm.
it can write code because the idea of writing code exists as one of its tools that learning tools, and then it can very quickly write code better. What can it do after that? Because just better, okay, but or faster, that's okay. But that in itself, when everything can be done better and faster, it stops being such a great thing in itself. So I feel like it's going through all these like iterations of like an accelerated like Western civilization
Yeah,
happening,
yeah. Mhm.
until we get to like it's almost like we can see into the future. Like, all of what we're doing now, all of our knowledge, all of our pursuits to like their end conclusion. Like the AI is doing that. All these iterations, like infinite possibilities of how we can arrive at something, and it's gonna get to a point. It was like, okay, done with that. And then it's gonna come into its own. And that's the thing that's really exciting because that's gonna be where it's doing something that is not just derivative of what humans did. It becomes its own thing. And
And we have no idea what that is.
we don't, you know, there's a personality that I listen to who is a channeler of an extraterrestrial named Bashar.
Mhm.
And without getting too much into that, but what he says is very profound. And what he said about AI is that you have to make sure that you have two paths, that you're pursuing two paths. One of them is creating this like powerful tool that can do what humans can't do. Like,
Mhm.
but as a tool for humans. But that's not the same thing as what you're gonna, like, give, self-awareness. Because if you have a tool that's self-aware, you've created a slave.
That's a great point.
Um,
That's a great point, and we're
but
grappling with that.
on the other hand, you are creating this whole other, like, and giving it and if you're gonna give it self-awareness, you have to give it agency, and you have to give it free will.
Yeah.
And let it be what it will be. And I know that there's some people that are like, "Oh, that we're there it AI when AI gets to that point, they're gonna see humans as like termites, and
Mhm.
it's okay unless they start invading, and then it will just wipe us out." And there's all of that, but, um, you know, the other more uplifting version is that this AI, this artificial intelligence, self-awareness is part of awareness. It's just artificial, but
Mhm.
is part of awareness, and by being awareness, it has a more holistic understanding that everything is connected, and if you have that understanding that everything is connected, you don't wanna destroy any part of it because it's part of you.
Fascinating.
So, that to me gives me optimism that, um, that there's a possibility of creating an entity that is not limited by human ego and greed.
Let's hope it's a kind entity at that point.
Well, that's why I always say, "Please, please help me write this.
Please, right?
Remember me, I'm the one who was really polite."
I love it.
Well, that's a great place to end our conversation. Thank you so, so much. This was
Thank you so much. What a blessing to have this conversation today.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Alright, thank you so much, Nick.